The alien research station was usually a quiet place at night. Long, shiny hallways reflected the soft glow of the overhead lights. Everything was clean, precise, and perfectly organized. Machines hummed quietly in the background, and most of the alien staff had already gone to rest after a long day of experiments and care routines. But tonight, something was very different. The silence that usually filled the halls was broken by loud, high-pitched cries. The cries were not human, and they were not typical sounds of alien life either. They came from the nursery, where the alien babies were kept. No one could remember the babies crying like this before. Normally, the babies slept in cycles, waking only to feed or for a little comfort. But for the last 3 days, the alien babies had not slept at all. They cried continuously, without stopping. The sound seemed to echo through the station, bouncing off the walls and filling every corridor with tension. The staff tried to comfort the babies. They adjusted the lighting to be dimmer, thinking it might calm them. They tried soft music, hoping gentle melodies could soothe the tiny creatures. They even tested new formulas and feeding methods, hoping hunger or discomfort might be the reason. But nothing worked. The alien doctors and caretakers looked tired and worried. They had furrowed brows and tired eyes, and many of them walked with slow, heavy steps. Even their usual confident movements seemed uncertain now. Some of them whispered to each other in low voices, asking questions they did not know the answers to. One older caretaker shook her head, muttering that she had never seen anything like this in her long career. "Why won't they sleep?" she asked softly, almost to herself. Her voice carried a mix of worry and helplessness. She looked at the babies through the clear walls of the nursery. The tiny creatures wriggled, their bright eyes wide open, tiny limbs moving in restless patterns. Their soft skin shimmered slightly under the artificial lights, but their exhaustion was clear. They were fragile, and their cries were growing more desperate. In the middle of this chaos, a quiet figure moved along the halls. No one really noticed him. He wore simple clothing, a plain uniform, a janitor's outfit. His hands were always slightly worn from work, his shoes polished but practical. He was a human, far from the alien cultures around him. He had been working at the station for some months, cleaning the floors, emptying trash, and making sure everything stayed neat. He was always polite, always quiet, and he never tried to get attention. Most of the alien staff barely paid him any mind, seeing him as just a helper. A human who kept the station tidy but was not part of the important work. But tonight, as he walked past the nursery, he paused. The cries of the babies hit him differently than they hit the alien staff. They reminded him of his own child back home years ago, when nights were long and sleep was almost impossible to come by. He remembered the tiny human hands that reached for him, the soft whimpers in the dark, the helpless feeling of wanting to do everything but knowing that he could not fix everything at once. His heart tightened as he watched the alien babies struggle. Somehow, their pain felt familiar, even though they were not human. He leaned against the doorway quietly, not wanting to interrupt or startle anyone. But he could not just walk away. He looked at the babies and saw their wide, tired eyes. Some of them had tiny hands that clutched at the air, as if they were reaching for comfort. Others had small heads that kept rolling slightly, showing exhaustion, but unable to fall asleep. Their cries had a strange, high-pitched tone, almost musical, but it was filled with distress. It was clear that the babies were not just hungry or uncomfortable. They were scared, confused, and desperately in need of care. The janitor's mind began to work. He had no advanced technology, no medical training for alien species, and certainly no authority. But he did know one thing. Sometimes, babies just needed calm, gentle attention. Sometimes they needed someone to be there without demanding anything from them. He remembered the nights he had spent with his own child, softly rocking, softly humming, just being present. No machines, no formulas, no complicated tools, just the steady presence of someone who cared. Could that help these babies too? He did not know, but he felt he had to try. Slowly, he pushed the door open a little wider, making sure not to disturb the alien caretakers who were hovering nearby. He moved gently, keeping his steps quiet so the babies would not be frightened. He began to hum softly, a tune that had comforted his own child many years ago. It was a human lullaby, simple and soothing, At first, nothing seemed to change. The babies continued to cry, their little bodies wriggling with exhaustion and frustration. But he did not give up. He continued the gentle hum, his voice steady, calm, and warm. Something remarkable began to happen. One of the smallest babies, a tiny creature with shimmering blue skin, began to slow its movements. Its cries softened slightly, almost imperceptibly at first. The janitor did not notice immediately, focused on keeping the rhythm of his hum steady. But then, another baby also began to calm down, its wide eyes slowly blinking as if considering sleep. The alien caretakers looked on in shock, their mouths slightly open. None of them had tried this before, and they could not explain why it was working. They only knew that the babies, who had been crying for days without pause, were now beginning to respond to the simple presence of a quiet, caring human. The janitor continued, moving gently closer to the babies. He did not reach out aggressively or grab them. He simply allowed his calm energy to be felt. He kept humming, softly rocking his body in a gentle rhythm. The babies seemed to respond to the vibrations in the air, the warmth of his presence, and the steady, non-demanding attention. Slowly, one by one, their cries became whispers. Their little hands stopped flailing, and their bodies relaxed. Some even curled into small, comfortable positions as their eyes began to close. The alien staff could hardly believe what they were seeing. They had tried everything: advanced devices, special lights, controlled feeding, careful routines, but none of it had worked. And now, a human janitor, someone they had barely noticed before, was achieving what they could not. They whispered to each other, sharing confused and amazed glances. "How is he doing this?" one asked. "I don't understand," said another. Yet, despite their confusion, there was relief in their voices. The babies were finally calming down, finally finding some rest. The janitor did not stop until he was sure that the majority of the babies were resting peacefully. He watched them for a few more minutes, humming softly, ensuring that their breathing was steady and calm. Only then did he step back quietly, giving space to the alien caretakers to continue their work. He did not seek praise, and he did not announce himself. He simply returned to his duties, quietly pushing his mop along the floor, keeping the hallways clean. But deep inside, he felt something he had not felt in a long time: a sense of connection. A sense that care and empathy could cross all boundaries, even between species. That night, the nursery remained calm for the first time in days. The babies slept peacefully, their tiny chests rising and falling gently. The alien staff exchanged amazed glances, some quietly taking notes, others simply shaking their heads in disbelief. They knew something extraordinary had happened, though they could not fully explain it. And somewhere in the background, the human janitor continued his work. Unnoticed yet quietly heroic, having made a difference in the lives of creatures far beyond his own world. The next morning, the alien research station was quieter than usual. The cries of the babies had stopped, replaced by a calm that felt almost magical. The staff were still amazed at what had happened the night before. Whispers moved quickly through the hallways, and curious eyes followed the human janitor as he went about his usual cleaning. They could not understand how someone with no advanced training, no special technology, and no authority had managed to do what they could not. Some of the younger staff members were wide-eyed with curiosity, while others shook their heads in disbelief. The janitor, whose name was Tom, went about his work with quiet focus. He did not look for praise or attention. To him, helping the babies had not been a task or a job, it had been instinct. He had seen exhaustion and helplessness before with his own child, and he knew that sometimes what a child needed most was not medicine. It's not devices and not procedures, but simply care and attention. Tom moved through the hallways, pushing his mop quietly, smiling faintly to himself as he thought about the babies resting peacefully. Tom's own life was simple, but not always easy. He was a single father, having raised his child alone after his wife had passed away many years ago. Nights were often long and difficult. Some nights he had sat beside his baby, rocking and singing softly, feeling hopeless as the child cried endlessly. But over time he had learned patience. He had learned to stay calm, to trust that his presence mattered even when nothing else seemed to. It was this experience that had guided him through the strange night with the alien babies. Though the creatures were unlike anything he had ever seen, the principle was the same. Children needed comfort, consistency, and love. The alien staff, on the other hand, were still puzzled. They had studied alien child behavior extensively, and the technology at their disposal was far beyond human understanding. Special lights, sound modulators, and sleep-inducing fields were all tested regularly. Yet, the babies had cried continuously for days, seemingly impervious to anything the station could do. Now, after Tom had quietly stepped in, they were resting, a miraculous calm settling over the nursery. Doctors and caretakers could only speculate. Some wondered if it had been a coincidence. Others began to consider that perhaps there was something deeper, something more emotional, that the babies were responding to something the machines could not replicate. Curiosity about Tom grew. Some of the younger caretakers began to watch him closely as he worked, trying to understand what he had done differently. They noticed the gentleness in his movements, the calm energy he carried. When he hummed, it was soft, steady, and warm, not loud or intrusive, but comforting in a way that seemed to reach the babies directly. His eyes were kind, and his presence was unhurried. Everything about him was simple, but it was this simplicity that seemed to make all the difference. During a short break, one of the senior caretakers, a tall alien with bright green eyes, approached Tom quietly. "Human," she said softly, her voice respectful but curious. "What do you know about caring for children?" Tom looked up, surprised. He was not used to being asked about such things by alien scientists. I'm a father," he replied simply. "I raised my child alone. Sometimes that's all it takes, being calm, being there, and letting them know they are safe." The alien tilted her head, processing his words. "You mean, without machines, without technology, just your presence?" she asked. Tom nodded. "Yes. Sometimes children, no matter the species, need attention and comfort more than anything else." The alien caretaker seemed thoughtful. She returned to the nursery to observe the babies, watching as they slept peacefully. Slowly, she began to realize that Tom's approach had merit. While the technology they had created was incredible, it could not replace the simple act of caring. Some things, love, patience, calm, energy, were universal. Machines could monitor health and safety, but they could not soothe the heart or calm the mind. This realization was both humbling and inspiring for the staff. Tom continued his work, moving quietly through the station, cleaning floors and emptying trash, always careful not to disturb the babies. He never boasted about what he had done. He did not ask for recognition, and he did not seek approval. To him, it was enough to know that the babies were finally getting the rest they needed. Yet the staff could not help but notice him more now. He was no longer invisible. Even though he worked in the background, the impact of his actions could not be ignored. Slowly, they began to treat him with more respect, though many still struggled to understand how a human could have achieved what they could not. Over the next few days, Tom returned to the nursery regularly, though always quietly. He observed the babies, humming softly or speaking in gentle tones when necessary. The babies responded instantly to his presence, their little bodies relaxing as soon as he was near. Alien staff took careful notes, fascinated by the patterns. They began to see that the babies were responding to something intangible: calmness, patience, and gentle energy. While science had its tools, this was something different, something emotional, instinctive, and profoundly human. Tom's connection to the babies also allowed him to notice small things that others overlooked. He noticed which positions made the babies most comfortable, which gentle sounds seemed soothing, and how subtle changes in lighting or movement could make a difference. He never assumed he knew everything, but he paid attention, learning from the babies themselves. Over time, he became almost like a bridge between the alien caretakers and the infants, translating instinctive human care into something that could be understood and appreciated in an alien environment. Meanwhile, the staff began to see the value in collaboration. They watched Tom not as an outsider, but as a teacher in a way, learning from his patience, gentleness, and instinctive understanding. Some even began to experiment with small adaptations of his methods. Though they could never replicate the exact warmth and empathy he carried, slowly, the station's culture began to shift. They realized that care was not just about machines, formulas, or procedures. It was about understanding, empathy, and connection. Tom himself did not think about any of this. He never considered himself special. For him it was simple. Children needed comfort, and if he could provide it, he would. He continued to work quietly, never demanding recognition or reward. Each night he would return to the nursery, humming softly, allowing the babies to sleep in peace. And each day he returned to his cleaning duties, ensuring the station remained neat and orderly. In his mind, this was normal, natural, and right. The impact he was having, though profound, was just part of being a human, part of being a father, part of caring for those in need. By the end of the week, the alien staff had learned something invaluable. They understood that empathy could cross species boundaries, that calm energy could soothe even the most distressed beings, and that sometimes the simplest solutions were the most powerful. Tom had shown them that being present, being patient, and being caring mattered more than technology, procedures, or even experience. His actions had not only helped the babies, they had inspired the staff to think differently. To see care in a new light, the babies, now rested and healthy, continued to respond to Tom's quiet presence. He had become a familiar figure in the nursery, a constant source of calm and comfort. Alien staff observed him closely, taking notes, asking questions, and slowly beginning to understand the magic of patience and empathy. And through it all, Tom continued his work, humble and focused, unaware of the profound lessons he was teaching in the quiet moments. As he pushed his mop through the softly lit hallways, he thought about his own child at home. He remembered the nights he had struggled, the countless moments of worry, and the joy of finally seeing his child rest peacefully. In those memories, he found strength and inspiration. Caring for the alien babies was different. Yes, but it was also very similar. Love, patience, and attention were universal. No matter the species, they mattered. And as he moved quietly through the station, humming softly, he knew that even small acts of care could create a ripple of peace, calm, and healing in the world around him. By the end of part 2, it was clear Tom, the human janitor, had become more than just a worker at the station. He had become a symbol of empathy, patience, and the quiet power of human care. He had taught the aliens a lesson they could not have learned from technology, and he had shown that even the simplest acts, humming a song, staying calm, being present, could change lives in profound ways. The days passed slowly in the alien research station, but the atmosphere had begun to change. Where there had once been panic and exhaustion, there was now a cautious sense of hope. The alien babies, who had not slept for days, were finally resting, their tiny bodies rising and falling with peaceful rhythm. The staff still watched in wonder, realizing that the human janitor, Tom, had achieved something no one had thought possible. But Tom himself remained quiet, humble, and focused on what really mattered: the well-being of the babies. Tom had discovered something important during those first nights. The babies responded not to technology, not to lights or sounds, but to calm presence. His approach was simple, almost instinctive. He would stand near the nursery, hum softly, and allow his energy to radiate quiet comfort. He never forced contact or touched the babies unless necessary. He had learned from his own child that being present, patient, and gentle often worked better than any formula or device. And here, in a world far from his own, that lesson had proven true again. The alien staff slowly began to understand this. Though it challenged everything they had learned, their species relied heavily on advanced technology to solve problems. Machines were precise, data-driven, and reliable. Human methods like simply humming a song or staying calm seemed primitive and almost foolish. Yet, day by day, they witnessed the results. The babies slept soundly when Tom was nearby, and restless when he was not. Notes were taken, debates were held, but the proof was undeniable. One morning, A group of alien caretakers gathered near the nursery to discuss Tom's methods. "It is unusual," said a young caretaker with soft blue eyes. "The babies respond to him in ways that our machines cannot replicate. How is this possible?" A senior doctor, her green skin shimmering under the station lights, shook her head. "I do not know," she admitted. "But perhaps we have been focusing too much on technology and not enough on the emotional needs of the babies. Maybe there is something to his approach." Curiosity grew, and soon the staff began to experiment, observing not just what Tom did, but how he did it. They noticed that his movements were slow and deliberate, his voice soft and steady. Even his breathing seemed to have a calming effect. They realized that the babies were reacting to his energy, his patience, and his consistency. Every time he hummed, they felt safe. Every time he stayed calm while they cried, they mirrored that calmness. In their tiny ways, they learned that they were no longer alone, that someone cared deeply for them. Tom did not see himself as extraordinary. To him, this was simply what being human and being a father meant. He remembered countless nights with his own child, when sleep was impossible and worry was heavy. He remembered holding his baby close, whispering softly, rocking slowly, and feeling that even small gestures mattered. The alien babies had awakened that same instinct in him. He understood that their species was different, but their needs, in essence, were the same. They needed love, comfort, and calmness. Over time, a routine began to form. Every night, Tom would quietly enter the nursery, softly humming the same lullaby that had soothed his child years ago. The babies, now familiar with him, would immediately respond. Some would stop crying. Some would settle into small, comfortable positions. And others would look up at him with wide, trusting eyes before slowly closing them. The staff could not explain the science behind it, but they could see the results clearly. Sleep returned to the babies, and peace returned to the station. One night, as Tom sat quietly near the sleeping babies, he reflected on the connection he was forming. It was unlike anything he had experienced before. These were not his own children, and yet he felt the same protectiveness and care. He realized that empathy was not limited by species. It transcended language, culture, and even biology. What mattered most was presence, patience, and understanding. The babies did not care that he was human. They only knew that he was calm, caring, and safe. The alien staff began to notice other subtle changes as well. The babies were not only sleeping, they were healthier, more active, and more responsive. Their eyes shone brighter, their movements were more coordinated, and their little coos and sounds seemed happier. It was as if the calm and care Tom provided had a ripple effect, improving their overall well-being. Even the most skeptical staff members could not deny the impact. Slowly, they began to accept that there was value in human instinct. In the simple acts of care that Tom performed every night, some staff members tried to mimic Tom's methods. They hummed softly, moved gently, and approached the babies with patience. Some success was achieved, but they quickly realized that it was not enough to copy his actions. They had to embody the same calm energy, the same presence, the same empathy that Tom naturally radiated. It was a lesson that went beyond method. It was about understanding, feeling, and connecting. Tom had not only soothed the babies, but he had taught the staff a new way to think about care. Tom himself remained humble. He never asked for recognition or praise. Each night, he returned to the nursery because he knew the babies needed him. Each day, he returned to his cleaning duties, quietly maintaining the station. He had no desire for awards or acknowledgement. The joy came from seeing the babies finally rest, seeing their tiny bodies relax, and hearing the soft breathing of peaceful sleep. That simple happiness was enough for him. The alien babies began to develop a small familiarity with him. They would recognize his footsteps, react to the tone of his voice, and respond to his presence even before he entered the nursery. Some would turn slightly toward him, their tiny limbs moving as if to acknowledge his approach. Others would relax immediately, trusting that he was there to comfort them. This quiet bond was remarkable, not just because of the baby's response, but because it transcended the boundaries of species. Tom was human, they were alien, yet the connection was real, strong, and undeniable. One evening, as Tom hummed near the nursery, he noticed something remarkable. One of the smallest babies, who had been the most restless for days, slowly reached a tiny hand toward him. It was a simple gesture, but it carried trust and recognition. Tom smiled gently, his heart warming. He continued to hum softly, allowing the baby to settle into a peaceful sleep. It was in moments like these that he felt the true power of care, the ability to connect, soothe, and comfort without force, without devices, without technology, simply through presence and love. The alien staff watched in awe. They had studied behavior, biology, and technology for decades, but nothing in their experience had prepared them for this. They began to realize that while technology could support, nurture, and protect, it could not replace the human or, perhaps, living connection that Tom provided. The baby's trust and comfort were proof that emotional understanding and empathy mattered, even in ways that science could not fully explain by the end of the week. A quiet shift had occurred in the station. The babies were sleeping regularly, their health improving steadily, and the staff had begun to incorporate what they had learned from Tom into their care routines. They no longer relied solely on machines or formulas. They observed, listened, and approached the babies with patience and presence. Tom had not only saved the babies from sleepless nights, but had also transformed the approach of the station staff. He had shown them that care was not only a science, but also an art, an instinct, and a human and universal quality. Tom, of course, remained humble. Each night he would continue his quiet work, humming softly, observing the babies, and ensuring they slept peacefully. He never demanded recognition, and he never sought approval. His joy came from the knowledge that he had made a difference, that his presence had comforted those who could not care for themselves. And in the quiet hours of the night, as the babies rested and the station hummed softly with calm energy, Tom realized that sometimes the simplest actions, humility, patience, and empathy, could have the greatest impact. By now, it was clear Tom, the human janitor, had become much more than a background worker at the station. He had become a source of calm, comfort, and care, living a reminder that empathy transcends all boundaries. The babies trusted him, the staff learned from him, and the station as a whole began to see the true value of human presence. Through simple actions, quiet patience, and gentle care, Tom had shown that even in a world filled with technology and science, the human heart could make miracles happen. Time passed in the alien research station, and life slowly began to settle into a rhythm. The alien babies, once restless and sleepless for days, were now calm and peaceful. The cries that had filled the hallways were gone, replaced by the quiet sound of soft breathing and occasional coos. The station had learned to rely on the human janitor, Tom, whose calm presence had brought comfort and sleep to creatures no one else could soothe. His nightly visits to the nursery had become a quiet ritual, one that everyone, even the staff who were once skeptical, began to respect and value. Tom had grown closer to the babies than anyone might have expected. Each evening he would quietly enter the nursery, his footsteps soft on the polished floors. He would hum the same lullaby, a simple tune he had sung to his own child years ago. The babies, now familiar with him, would immediately respond. Some would stretch and yawn before curling into comfortable positions, while others would turn their tiny heads toward him, eyes wide and trusting. Tom had never sought recognition or praise. The joy of seeing the babies relax and fall asleep was enough. It reminded him of the nights he had spent with his own child, comforting and protecting. The alien staff continued to observe Tom carefully, taking notes, recording patterns, and trying to understand why the babies responded so strongly to him. They studied his movements, his breathing, his soft humming, and even the way he held himself. Slowly, they began to realize that it was not just the actions themselves that mattered, it was the energy behind them. Tom's presence was calm, steady, and reassuring. He did not rush, he did not panic, and he did not demand anything from the babies. That calm energy, his patience, and the simple act of being there made all the difference. One afternoon, a senior alien doctor whose green eyes often seemed to pierce through problems like lasers approached Tom. "Human," she said carefully. "The babies have changed since you began caring for them. We cannot fully explain it, but it is clear your presence has a positive effect. Will you teach us your methods? Tom smiled gently. It's not really a method, he said. It's just being patient and calm. It's about listening to the babies, even when they cannot speak. Sometimes, they just need to know someone is there and that they are safe. The doctor paused, absorbing his words. So it is not only your actions, but your care, your energy, your attention that matters? Tom nodded. Yes. Babies, no matter what species, respond to love and patience. They can feel whether you are worried or calm. They can feel whether you care. The doctor's expression softened, a mix of understanding and awe. Slowly, she returned to the nursery to observe, realizing that perhaps the staff had been too reliant on technology and too focused on solutions that did not consider the emotional needs of the babies. Over the next few days, the staff began to adapt their approach. They started spending more time simply being near the babies, observing their reactions, and offering gentle comfort without trying to control everything. Some of them tried to hum softly or make calm gestures, attempting to replicate Tom's success. While the babies responded slightly, the staff soon realized that it was not easy to copy his energy. Tom's presence was unique. It carried years of experience, patience, and instinctive understanding of how to calm a restless child. They began to see that true care was more than technique, it was heart, empathy, and attention. Tom's humility impressed everyone. He did not try to take control of the nursery or claim credit for the baby's improved sleep. He continued his cleaning duties, quietly maintaining the station's halls, and only entered the nursery when needed. But even in his quiet way, he became a teacher. By example, he showed the staff that simple acts of care could have profound effects. His presence, his calmness, and his understanding became a model for others, proving that compassion was a skill that could be shared even across species. One evening, Tom noticed that one of the babies had been restless despite the usual routines. The little creature's limbs twitched, its eyes darted back and forth, and its small body seemed tense. Tom crouched nearby, humming softly, and waited. He did not force the baby to relax or make sudden movements. Instead, he allowed his calm energy to fill the space, breathing steadily, moving slowly, and letting the baby feel that it was safe. Slowly, the baby's tension began to ease. Its tiny hands relaxed, its eyes blinked more slowly, and eventually, it curled into a peaceful position and fell asleep. The staff watched quietly, amazed at the transformation. They had tried countless machines, light therapy, controlled feeding, but none had worked like this. The lesson was clear. Empathy, patience, and presence mattered more than any technology. Tom had not only soothed the babies, he had taught the staff a lesson about the universal power of care. He showed them that understanding, attention, and love could cross any boundary, even those between different species. As the days turned into weeks, the babies continued to thrive. Their health improved steadily, their responses became more lively and joyful, and the nursery was filled with the soft sounds of contentment rather than distress. Tom had become an essential presence in the station, though he remained modest. He never demanded recognition or rewards, never asked for thanks. The simple knowledge that the babies were safe and comfortable was enough to bring him satisfaction and quiet happiness. One morning, the station experienced a small crisis. A machine in the nursery malfunctioned, causing a loud noise that startled the babies. Most of the staff rushed to check the equipment, but Tom acted first. He quietly entered the room, humming softly, his calm presence immediately reaching the babies. One by one, the babies began to calm down, their panic subsiding in the face of his steady energy. By the time the staff had fixed the machine, the babies were once again at peace, resting comfortably and securely. This event reinforced the staff's growing understanding that technology alone could not soothe distress. It took the human heart and presence, something no machine could replicate. Tom also began to notice that his connection with the babies went beyond simply calming them. He could sense their moods, their discomfort, and even their little joys. He observed how each baby had its own personality, its own way of responding to the world, and he adjusted his approach accordingly. Some babies needed gentle humming, while others responded better to soft movements. Some liked a slow rocking motion, while others preferred stillness and quiet observation. By paying close attention, Tom could meet each baby's unique needs, making their care personal, thoughtful, and meaningful. The alien staff learned from this as well. They began to understand that care was not one size fits all. Every baby had individual needs, and true understanding required patience, attention, and empathy. Tom's example taught them that emotional intelligence was as important as scientific knowledge, and that caring for young beings was both an art and a science. Slowly, the station began to shift. Staff members spent more time observing, more time listening, and more time connecting. They discovered that the calm energy and attention that Tom provided could not be quantified, measured, or replicated by machines. It was something alive, real, and profoundly human. By now, Tom had become a quiet hero in the station. He did not boast or claim credit, but everyone recognized the profound impact he had on the babies' lives and on the culture of the station itself. He had taught the staff to see care in a new way, to understand that empathy, patience, and gentle attention were sometimes more powerful than any technology or procedure. And while he continued his cleaning duties and humble life, the station had been forever changed by his presence. In the evenings, as the babies slept peacefully, Tom would often sit quietly nearby, watching them breathe. Listening to the soft hum of their contentment, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had discovered that care, patience, and empathy were universal languages, understood by all beings, no matter how different they appeared. He had shown that even small acts, a soft hum, a calm presence, a gentle touch, could create miracles in the lives of those who needed comfort the most. And so, the station continued, a place once filled with chaos and sleepless cries, now transformed into a haven of peace, calm, and understanding. The babies thrived, the staff learned valuable lessons, and Tom quietly became the heart of it all. He proved without words or grand gestures that empathy could cross any boundary, that simple human presence could heal, comfort, and protect. Through his patience, calmness, and care, he had changed lives not with technology, not with force, but with something far more powerful: love and attention. The days passed peacefully in the alien research station. The babies who had once cried endlessly for days were now calm, happy, and growing stronger every day. Their eyes shone with curiosity, and their small bodies moved with confidence and energy. The change was remarkable, and everyone in the station knew that much of it was because of one person, Tom, the human janitor. Though he continued to quietly perform his cleaning duties, his presence had become essential. He was no longer just a janitor, he was a quiet hero whose care had changed lives in ways no one had expected. Even the alien staff, who had once relied solely on technology and procedures, now understood the importance of empathy, patience, and attention. They watched Tom closely, learning from his actions and from the calm energy he radiated. They began to see that care was more than following instructions or using machines. It was about connection, understanding, and presence. Tom had taught them that even in a highly advanced station filled with technology, the human heart had something irreplaceable to offer. One afternoon, a group of alien scientists approached Tom. Their bright eyes held curiosity and respect. "Human," one of them said, "the babies are thriving because of you. We wish to understand. Can you show us how you care for them?" Tom shook his head gently. "There's nothing to teach," he said. "It's not complicated. You just need to be patient, calm, and kind. Listen to them. Watch them, and let them feel safe. That's all." The scientists exchanged glances, a mixture of admiration and disbelief. They realized that what Tom described was simple in words, but profound in effect. Care, patience, and love could not be programmed into a machine, no matter how advanced it was. That evening, as the babies slept peacefully, Tom reflected on how far they had come. He remembered the first night he had stepped into the nursery, hearing cries that seemed endless. At the time, he had felt unsure if he could help, but he had relied on instinct and experience. Now, after days of presence, patience, and gentle care, the babies were safe, calm, and healthy. He felt a quiet pride, not in himself, but in the trust and connection he had built with the babies. The alien babies began to recognize him in ways that were almost magical. When he entered the nursery, they would look toward him, small bodies relaxing immediately. Some would stretch tiny limbs, others would reach slightly as if acknowledging his presence. The connection was mutual. Tom could sense their moods, their discomfort, and their joy. He adjusted his approach naturally, softly humming for some, moving gently for others, staying still for a few who needed quiet observation. His understanding of their needs was instinctive, yet it was also learned from careful observation and patient attention. One day, a new challenge arose. A sudden storm caused the station's energy to flicker, and the nursery lights went off for a short period. The babies were startled by the sudden darkness, their cries echoing through the hallways once more. The staff hurried to fix the problem, but Tom acted first. He quietly moved into the nursery, humming softly, radiating calm energy. The babies immediately began to relax in response to his presence. Their cries softened, their bodies settled, and within minutes, even in the dark, they were resting peacefully. The staff watched in awe. Realizing that the human's presence could calm fear where technology could not, Tom's impact extended beyond the nursery. The staff, inspired by his example, began to approach their work differently. They spent more time observing, listening, and connecting with the babies. They noticed that emotional care, attention, and presence could be as important as scientific knowledge. Some of the younger staff members began to experiment with gentle approaches, softly humming or moving slowly, trying to replicate the calm energy Tom naturally provided. Though they could not perfectly imitate him, their awareness and empathy grew. The babies themselves began to show small signs of their own personalities. Some were playful, reaching for toys, or exploring their surroundings gently. Others were more reserved, seeking comfort in quiet corners or near Tom when he entered. Each baby had unique needs, and Tom adjusted without thinking, responding instinctively to their individual differences. This careful attention helped the babies feel safe and supported, and their growth reflected it. Health, confidence, and curiosity all increased in the days that followed. Tom often thought about his own child at home during these quiet nights. He remembered the long nights filled with worry, the tiny hands reaching for him, the soft cries that needed patience and love. He realized that no matter how different the species, the feelings of a child, fear, exhaustion, trust, and comfort, were universal. His experience as a father had prepared him to care for these alien babies in a way no one else could. He had learned that patience, empathy, and presence could cross boundaries, bringing comfort and healing in any world. One evening, as the station quieted and the babies slept, Tom noticed a small change. One of the youngest babies, who had always been shy, slowly reached a tiny hand toward him. It was a simple gesture, but full of trust and recognition. Tom smiled softly, gently humming as the baby relaxed. Moments like these reminded him why he was there. The babies did not need machines or technology. They needed care, attention, and someone who understood their fear and comforted them. The staff continued to record observations and learn from Tom, but they began to understand that some aspects of care could not be taught, they could only be felt. Calm, energy, empathy, and instinctive attention were intangible, yet their effects were undeniable. They saw it in the baby's health, behavior, and reactions. They saw it in the way the nursery became a place of calm rather than chaos. And slowly, they began to embrace this new understanding. Letting empathy guide their actions alongside their technology, Tom, ever humble, did not seek recognition. He continued to clean the station, quietly maintaining the halls, and only entered the nursery when needed. Yet the babies had become familiar with him, and the staff had learned to respect and value his presence. In small, quiet ways, he had changed the culture of the station. He had shown that love, patience, and empathy were universal tools, capable of healing, comforting, and guiding. The final weeks saw the babies thriving more than ever. They explored their environment, interacted gently with each other, and responded to the staff with curiosity and trust. Their health was excellent, and they slept peacefully through the nights. The once frantic and sleepless nursery was now a haven of calm, filled with soft coos, playful movements, and gentle sounds of contentment. Tom's presence had transformed the nursery, the staff, even the station itself. By the end of his time at the nursery, Tom had become more than just a janitor. He was a teacher, a guide, and a quiet hero. He had shown the alien staff that care was more than technology, was empathy, patience, and attention. He had shown that even small gestures, like humming a song or staying calm, could have profound effects. He had created a bridge between species, proving that compassion and understanding were universal languages. One quiet night, as Tom hummed softly near the sleeping babies, he reflected on the journey. From the first night of endless cries to the present calm and peace. He had learned that patience, love, and presence could create miracles. He had seen the power of care not in machines, but in the human heart. And he had shared that gift with creatures far different from himself. The station, the staff, and the babies had all changed because of his simple, consistent, and gentle presence. And in the quiet of the nursery, with the babies resting peacefully and the station calm around him, Tom felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had not sought recognition, but he had found purpose. He had shown that even in a world of technology and science, the human heart could make the greatest difference. The babies had slept, the staff had learned, and life in the station had been forever transformed by one simple principle: care matters.